This is Michael Popok, Legal AF, with breaking news. Fani Willis watching how Donald Trump is attacking the judge and prosecutor in Manhattan. She's sitting in Fulton County, Georgia, about to make her charging decision, likely in May, before another grand jury. She is warning Donald Trump that if he tries what he's doing in Manhattan, in Georgia, he's in for a world of hurt and ultimately possibly adding new charges for intimidation against the prosecutor's office and or his family. This in a recent interview just a day or so after Donald Trump took to the ballroom in Mar-a-Lago and started bashing all of the prosecutors, calling them, if they're black, racists, if they're black, animals, and if they're Jack Smith, insane, out of control, depraved. This is all the code words that he uses, that he mixes and matches for the various prosecutors, depending upon their ethnic background, their racial background, and the like. And Fani Willis, Fulton County Prosecutor, who's investigating Georgia election interference, has told Donald Trump in no uncertain terms, you come after my family, you come after my staff, you come after me in an improper way, you've crossed the line, you're no longer exercising proper First Amendment right to speak freely while you're presumed innocent, and you've now committed potentially another crime. And how do we know Donald Trump's going to do it? Because while he was in the courtroom in Manhattan, while all the prosecutors are watching, Jack Smith and all of his line prosecutors, Fani Willis and all of her line prosecutors, the Manhattan DA's office, and there are a dozen prosecutors that are going after Donald Trump now that he's been indicted. They're all watching to see what he's going to do, what he's going to write, what he's going to say, because they're going to use it in their case. They're going to use it in front of a judge to try to get a gag order if possible. They're going to use it to say that he's violated the terms related to his indictment or his arraignment. They're going to use it against him at trial. They're going to use it against him when he tries to get his hands on certain discovery produced by the prosecution, because there's going to be protective orders now in place. And every time the prosecutor needs something in his arsenal to put in front of the judge, Donald Trump is more than willing to provide it to him. You want evidence that I'm not going to respect the rules of this courthouse, the rules of this court? I'll give it to you. You want evidence that I don't respect the judge and I'm going to attack him mercilessly and go after his family and his daughter and his wife? I'm going to give it to you. You want evidence that I'm going to go after the prosecutor and his family and his wife and call them inappropriate things and threaten them to dismiss the indictment? I will give it to you. I mean, this is like manna from heaven. This is a cornucopia of evidence. If I'm the prosecutors in these cases, I am salivating. I'm rubbing my hands in glee because I've got an out of control, crazed opponent on the other side who's giving me gifts every day that I can use actually in real time in my cases. And Fani Willis keeping her eyes on Donald Trump, who's now squealing like a pig, having been now indicted once. He went after Fani Willis in Mar-a-Lago. And this now infamous, crazy, mutiny, the Kane mutiny, weird show of psychobabble, where he just went prosecution by prosecution against everybody and ended up attacking them one by one. And it's easy. If you're a black prosecutor or somebody like who's the New York Attorney General, you're a racist and you're an animal, so you're dehumanized. If you're white, you're insane, and you're politically motivated, and everybody's a Trump hater and everybody's a Trump basher. And let's find out what their wives and girlfriends and grandmothers have done for a living, or if they've been a Democrat or not. And let's call attention to the fact that prosecutors are elected in a political process generally. They're either Republican or Democrat, to make a big deal out of that. This is the playbook. And Fani Willis, like Judge Merchan in New York, who said almost the exact same thing to Donald Trump when he was the first judge to have him in his courtroom for a criminal charge. He looked at Mr. Trump in the eye and he said, if you go beyond the First Amendment and you try to incite violence in this city, you and I are going to have a problem. And I'm going to draw the line there. And Fani Willis picked up on that very same theme and said, I recognize the First Amendment, but there are limits. And if you go after me, my family, or my staff, you've crossed that line. And particularly, there is a line in Georgia, as there is in most other states. And the line is expressed in a criminal statute. There's actually a couple of them that I think would apply in this particular case. And you look at, if you want to find it, and we'll put it up on the screen, it's 16-10-97 of the Criminal Code of Georgia. And in particular, and I'll read for you what it says. It says that a person who by threat or force, by any threatening action, letter, or communication, injures any officer of the court, that's the prosecutor in this case, in any proceeding in any such court, then it is punishable as a felony up to 20 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. And that's not all. There's another provision that says if the attack is on the family of a law enforcement member, which is a prosecutor, it's another felony and it's punishable up to 5 years in prison. So watch it, former president. Watch it, Mr. Trump, who identified himself in court and in his booking as a businessman, not even as the former president, which he loves to call himself. President Trump, when they asked him in New York, because New Yorkers don't care about what you did in the past, especially Donald Trump, what's your profession? He didn't say, I'm a statesman. I'm a former president. I have an institute. I do foreign policy. I'm going for the Peace Prize like Jimmy Carter or Clinton or Obama. He said, businessman. I'm a businessman. Well, Mr. Businessman, if you go after Fani Willis and you keep making these statements in order for you to grift and bring in additional money, because every time you make a statement like that, you raise $5 to $40 million a day. That's on record. We know that from your PACs and all the other stuff that you're doing. She's going after you. And since she hasn't made her indicting decision, I mean, the mental depravity of Donald Trump and just the stupid strategy of pressuring and attacking prosecutors who haven't even yet made their charging decision is beyond stupid. Jack Smith is going to indict Donald Trump for one of 3 grand juries that are sitting in the District of Columbia, whether it's Mar-a-Lago, whether it's intentional interference with the election process and the peaceful transfer of power, or it's the money grift off of your failure to recognize Joe Biden as the president dutifully elected by voters. One of those 3 things, or all of those 3 things. Attacking him and calling him a radical, which is incorrect, and calling him a Democrat, he's not, he's an independent, and calling him insane when your own lawyer, Jim Trusty, one of your several, this one has been able to keep himself out of being indicted himself or before the grand jury, worked closely with Jack Smith. They're friends when they work together in the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he'll say the exact opposite. Just ask the guy next to you, ask your lawyer next to you. But that's not going to help you, Mr. Trump. That's not going to help you in averting an indictment. If anything, it's just pissing off the career investigators, FBI agents, prosecutor investigators, and line prosecutors who are eating, sleeping, and drinking you, Donald Trump, every day for the last 2 years. It's just making them focus more. It's just making them just a little bit more invested in bringing you down based on the evidence that they are developing. Same thing for Fani Willis. Attacking her is not going to make her go away. It's only going to make her redouble her efforts and her perseverance to go after you, to make them feel good every morning about getting up and going after and taking down somebody who's as vile as you are in your attacks, not only on prosecutors who barely get paid to do that job, but their families, their wives, their daughters. Okay? If we're going to talk about wives and daughters, why don't you talk about Clarence Thomas's wife, Ginny? Why don't you talk about all those other relationships and the siblings and the daughters and sons of Donald Trump grifting all along the way with our enemies? Do that. Talk about that. But let's not talk about the fact that, Judge Merchan in New York's daughter worked for a time, as a Democrat, and worked for the time for Kamala Harris, on her campaign. Who cares? What does that have to do with anything? You know, women and children and husbands and wives are separate units. Okay, they're independent, and they get to make their own decisions in this world about who they're going to vote for. It doesn't mean that their significant other is prosecuting you because they're Democrats or because, you know, somebody tweeted out something. It doesn't give you the right to put up pictures of you trying to brain the Manhattan DA with a baseball bat. And so Fani Willis has said, I've had enough. I've watched you. I've watched all the things that you did and all the lies that you're continuing to tell to your supporters about Fulton County and its investigation. He keeps saying, because he thinks it fits on it neatly on a bumper sticker, there was one perfect phone call in Fulton County and this crazy racist Trump hater prosecutor's going after me for it. By the way, there's not just one phone call. We now know from the special purpose grand jury that there's at least 4 or 5 phone calls involving you, calling all different people in Georgia, frantically trying to get them to throw the election to you. So you not only called Raffensperger looking for 11,780 votes on January the 2nd, but you also called David Ralston, who died in November, but at the time was the Speaker of the Georgia House, and asked him, get this as part of irony, asked him to impanel a special purpose grand jury, just like the one that was just used against you by Fani Willis, in order to take the election results away from Joe Biden and throw the election over to you. And even Ralston, who's right-wing as it came, now that he's passed away, I'll mention it, he even said, no, we're not doing that. So you have that phone call. You've got the phone call we just talked about. Trump called the governor and tried to get Brian Kemp to have a special session of the legislature and to do something about it. So there's not just one phone call. There's multiple phone calls between Ralston, Raffensperger, Kemp, all by Donald Trump, all recorded and all in evidence with Fani Willis down in Georgia. So stop lying to your followers and your cultists about what the nature of the indictment that is likely to come in May or beginning of June out of Fulton County is all about. And stop attacking law enforcement who put their lives on the line every day, okay, and try to create and incite and foment violence against them. In this country, we've had federal judges who have been assassinated. We've had family members of federal judges who were assassinated because they were home and the judge wasn't home. We've had bombs sent to federal and state judges. Some were successful in assassinating that member. Some weren't. We've had DAs and federal prosecutors shot and killed. Okay? That is the nature of what's happened here in this country. We have police, of course, that have been attacked, FBI agents who have been attacked. It's inappropriate. It's not a game. It's not television. It's not another episode of Succession. It's real life when Don Jr. doxes a wife, a daughter. That could be your wife or your daughter out there watching. That is what this family is about. That's the vile, corrupt nature of what is being prosecuted. Some of which is for, right now he's being prosecuted for things before he was even president. The next round is going to be for things he did while he was president and while he had left office. So we're going to get it all. We're going to get while he was president, after he left being president, and before he was president. That's who Donald Trump was. We elected, the majority, a corrupt individual who he and his family have been corrupt for a long, long time, had no place being anywhere near that sacred, hallowed Oval Office to represent the United States with the honor of being the president. That's what we elected. And his grift and kleptocracy continued on the way in, once he was in office, and after he left office. And now the prosecutors are just going after the facts, putting them in front of a jury of his peers and walking away with indictments and hopefully in the future convictions. But right now, Fani Willis and the other prosecutors are banding together to let Donald Trump know with a hard shove that his efforts of intimidation are not working, and if he crosses the line and gets himself out from under First Amendment, he'll be subject to gag orders, other conditions of arraignment, and possibly being charged with crime of intimidation. We'll talk more about these things and follow up with them on hot takes just like this one. And I co-anchor on Wednesdays and Saturdays the leading political and legal podcast on the MeidasTouch network. It's called Legal AF. And if you like what I'm doing, Michael Popok, you can follow me on social media at MS Popok. This is Michael Popok reporting.
Lock him up! Indictment season is upon us. Celebrate with the new Indictment Season t-shirt and v-neck exclusively at store.meidastouch.com.